Hi folks, this is Chris from the Punk at Paisley channel. If you're interested in any form of fuzzy or distorted guitar with a band that was playing to a small number of people sometime between 1965 and let's say 1990, this is the channel for you. Today we're going to go back to the 1980s and talk about some activist, hardcore, punk righteousness. The day that the punks fought apartheid and eventually won. And when I say fought apartheid, I mean fought. We're talking about the awesome compilation Viva Umkhonto that was put out in a joint release between More Damn Records in the US and De Conquerel in the Netherlands. And we're going to get into some detail on this. Now let's wind back to 1987. I know it's hard to believe, sitting here in 2025, it's hard to believe that the West in general and the United States could possibly be supporting an international pariah apartheid state, committing atrocities and spreading war throughout the region. I know it's hard. I know it's a stretch to conceive that such a thing could be happening back in the 80s here in 2025, when of course that sort of thing just doesn't happen anymore. But if you could put yourself in such a situation, if you could stretch yourself to believe that such a thing could be possible, because of course, as I said, there are no historical parallels here, and this is absolutely nothing like anything that's happening in 2025, because we all learned something, and everybody in the West in general, and the United States specifically, would never support an apartheid state that would be committing regional atrocities and spreading war throughout the region. That's just a ridiculous thing to even think about, let alone say, right? So yeah, it's good that humans live long enough to learn and improve. In any event, apartheid, the original apartheid, of course, in South Africa, this form of brutal, formerly racist Jim Crow on steroids that actually became ensconced formally in South African law, not until the 1940s. I don't think a lot of people realize that bit, but it was being fought. It had been fought for decades by the people living in South Africa, and there were a lot of allies, in the best sense of the word, throughout the world who were trying to change the world for the better. And of course, everything connected to hardcore and punk rock is exactly that. Now, what you did have in terms of activism from mainstream American society or mainstream entertainment, eventually, begrudgingly, over the objections of the political class who was interested in the gems and the diamonds, industrial diamonds, the gemstones, and the other mineral resources, uranium included, in South Africa. A lot of those people didn't want to see any change, and a lot of people in the United States saw the South African government, the white supremacist South African government, as being a bulwark against communism. In fact, Jerry Falwell would be on TV telling people to go out and invest in South African gold coins. It's a good thing, by the way, isn't it a good thing that this sort of thing where the wealth of white gem mining families has never, to this day in 2025, sort of accumulated and had any impact on, say, technology or economy or society today in the world of 2025. We really dodged a bullet there now, didn't we? But there were people fighting back, and we had Sun City, which was the pop stars. It was your Bruce Springsteen and your Stevie Wonder saying that they were going to bring down apartheid by not playing at a luxury resort in South Africa, because that'll teach them, that'll learn those meanies good. Or you could do what the punk rockers did, and you could have a benefit compilation for Umkhonto we Sizwe, the spear of the people, the armed wing of the African National Congress. This record was a fundraiser to buy weapons and ammunition for Nelson Mandela's African National Congress to uche the white supremacists in the S.C.A. So yeah, that's what was going on here. And when we talk about fighting apartheid, that turns out that worked rather better. Now, this was an incredible package. It was a joint effort between More Damn Records out of San Francisco and later Sacramento, which was founded by Ruth Schwartz, who was one of the co-founders of the awesome, incredible punk scene, Maximum Rock and Roll. If you're at all aware of virtually any alternative rock music since the early 1980s, Maximum Rock and Roll had a good deal to do with that. I'm going to do some videos on the zine itself because it is difficult, if not impossible, to overstate the impact of Maximum Rock and Roll and the whole DIY spirit as it played out in North America, centered on that zine out of Berkeley, California. And More Damn Records was the distributor, primarily a record distributor by Ruth Schwartz, who really made a lot of independent record distribution possible in the US because they actually were honest and paid labels on time. And they got records out. They were the distributor for Alternative Tentacles, later for Lookout Records, for Maximum Rock and Roll, the zine and its records. And really the reason why a lot of us who were of record buying age at that time could let's say pre-World Wide Web. Before the World Wide Web, you could go to a record store and actually find these zines and find these records on a shelf in at least urban centers in the United States. Even that wouldn't have been possible without More Damn. More Damn, of course, is one of your many word plays, one of your many puns in punk rock, where it's More Damn Records. It's More Damn Records. And More Damn was more a distributor, only put out less than 10, I believe, records in total on their own label. Most of those, about half of those, were the victim's family, who were on this record, and we'll talk about slightly in a bit. And the other half of this was a big indie Dutch label, very active in the scene in the Netherlands, which would be De Conquerel, which I'm also seeing written as Conqueren, depending. And this record's pretty incredible because you got your LP, we'll talk about the music in a second, but you also got a newspaper, Viva Umkhonto, which talks about South Africa, talks about apartheid, talks about the fight against it, talks about opposing the Reagan administration and U.S. corporations that were profiting from the state of things in South Africa and really in the region throughout which proxy wars were spreading, that the United States and the West were on one side of, and the Soviet Union and Cuba and its allies in the region were on the other side. You also got this Viva Umkhonto booklet, which has the lyrics for all of the songs, but it also has information about actions taken in Holland and some ideas for what you could do to vandalize or destroy properties. In this case, Royal Dutch Shell. They had a campaign called To Hell with Shell, an oil company that was headquartered in the Netherlands and is, I imagine still is, located in the Netherlands and the UK, I believe, or where it's headquartered, and just a lot of information about apartheid and how awful it was, the Soweto uprising. There was a previous record in this little limited series which is, I believe, was called Bullets Can't Stop Us. I did not own that one. That one came out a bit earlier. I had never seen a copy of that in a store, and the material on that some of it was not as interesting to 16-year-old me. There's a track which I believe is probably Township Jive, which is a native South African musical form that takes up a lot of one side. There was something described as an art noise track, which don't you threaten me. Don't you threaten me with art noise, record producers, and some punk rock. But this was just pure. We're gonna hardcore our way to raising some money for some Unsgay and Ulitsbay for Umkhonto Weisizwe. And we could talk about the music on here in the bands. It starts with a track by Scream, the Washington, D.C. area, Northern Virginia band that was at this point on their third album, I believe, a different lineup, and produced by Ian Mackay of Minor Threat Fugazi fame. And that track is really kind of, it sounds to me a bit like a hardcore meets Van Halen track, if you could imagine such a thing. This pounding sort of, dare we say, upbeat rhythm to get your blood pumping, and a good start to the record. Strong track, followed by Challenger Crew, who were a West German band with another somewhat herky-jerky offbeat hardcore track. Challenger Crew never got a full-length LP out. They had a split LP out. This is something that may be interesting, especially to young people, that it cost so much money in relative terms to get a record out that some bands would go in halvesies, literally, where one band would have one half of the record and the other band would have the other half of the record, and split costs and actually get some songs of theirs out there so that they could record something. And that some people, having half a record with another band that's your friends who you play a lot of shows with was better than the alternative of not being able to afford putting out any record. So Challenger Crew had put out a split LP with their label mates and presumably friends. Everything Falls Apart, who were another German band who have a track on the B-side of this album. The Everything Falls Apart track is Pain, and man, does that's hardcore, leaning in the direction of it's a little metallic, and the themes and the vocals, I guess, are leading toward it's sort of proto screamo, heading out in that direction. There's a track by a group from the Netherlands called Moorzelprank, or Moorzelprank. I'm not sure how to stick the Z in the name of that group. And it's an instrumental, and honestly, it sounds to me a whole lot like No Means No. At the same time came out with their album Sex Mad, which I think is a fantastic album. No Means No from Western Canada. If you told me that the Moorzelprank track was an outtake from the No Means No Sex Mad album, I wouldn't blink. It sounds like if you enjoy this material, you may well enjoy that track. Social Unrest, the veteran going back to 1979 California punk hardcore band who had just recorded their awesome, recently had recorded and released their awesome SU 2000 album, which I would say is one of the top, probably top 10 hardcore albums of all time, in my opinion. But they were coming out with their next album, the track American Steel, little reggae-ish break in that one, and so forth. You weren't just getting the straightforward hardcore on this album. You were getting some bands, as was pretty common in the mid to late 80s, when people have been around for a while. People were on their second bands, people were on their third bands, or it's the band's third album. And they got a little, people got a little restless with the straight ahead, fast as we can play hardcore, and started to mix it up a little, throwing in some other genres, maybe some metal, reggae, ska, jazzy influences, and so forth, interesting time signatures, and that sort of thing to try and mix things up a little, especially as a lot of these were young people who were just sort of finding themselves as musicians. Maybe now they've been playing guitar for 5 or 6 years. They've picked up a few chops and could play a few things that they couldn't play before. There are very mixed results with that in the mid to late 80s. Some things are carried off better than others. Some things are recorded and arranged better than others. But people were trying. You then get the X or the X if you prefer, who are often referred to as the Netherlands answer to Crass. Really the heart of political punk in Amsterdam and the Netherlands, and they do some of their interesting noise rock tape loop stuff with the track here that kind of suggests or implies that Ronald Reagan should be getting the Lee Harvey Oswald treatment. So there's that track. Flip side, you have Depraved, who are a pretty American-sounding British hardcore band with a track that's pretty straightforward. Victim's Family, who are from California, have their typical very jazzy influenced band. In fact, they had a track on their first album, an instrumental track titled George Benson, to give you some idea. But a very jazzy approach to thrashy hardcore, a little bit messy, definitely interesting. Some Victims Family tracks I find to be really catchy and interesting. Others are a little bit of a mess. And no surprise that considering that most of their catalog, or all of their catalog to this point, was coming out on More Damn, that they would be on a record that More Damn had a lot to do with. You then have B.G.K, who were kind of the archetypical straight-ahead Dutch political hardcore band. They were formed out of the ashes of the previous Dutch hardcore band Nitwits. Then you have a track by Rhythm Pigs. One of the better tracks on here. Rhythm Pigs were originally from El Paso, Texas, God bless them, and relocated to San Francisco, California, because why would you not? Especially considering that any American city, but particularly San Francisco, was far more affordable in the mid-1980s than it is now. And according to the definitive work on the topic, American Hardcore, the book that you should have if you're interested in any of that, but really not so much any of this, but slightly earlier time frame, more late 70s to by 85, they check out in the book here. So before this record came out. But Rhythm Pigs are interviewed and say that at least one of the members says now that they felt like they were hoodwinked a little bit into contributing to a track to something that was going to literally buy guns for an organization that was going to Uche their way out of apartheid. I'm trying not to get banned, demonetized, or what have you here by my choice of words. But in any event, and that's a little disappointing. It's a little disappointing decades later to learn that any members of one of the bands that was on here feels some kind of way in any way about being on this. I think that when you have people in this sort of situation, not that we do now in 2025, it's not as if there's anybody anywhere in the world with any sort of legitimate beef right now. Certainly not. Perish that thought. Get that thought right out of your head. But back in the 80s, let's just say, when there was a system of apartheid in a pariah state that was being backed by the United States, not like now, no historical parallels whatsoever. I would say that you should be. I'm going to pat myself on the back, pull muscle, patting myself on the back for approximately 16-year-old me taking some of my hard-earned money and purchasing hardware for anti-apartheid troops in South Africa. I'm proud of that. I didn't do, I don't have any kind of Nobel Prize coming or anything for that, but it's nice to be on the right side of history. Sit back and enjoy that sometimes, Rhythm Pigs. Everything Falls Apart, previously mentioned, are in here. Kafka Process, which means Kafka's Trial, who were the big, really, Norwegian hardcore band by this point in the 80s. And they, about now, are morphing into the band So Much Hate, who soldiered on into the 90s and were really the heart. These guys were really the heart of the Blitz collective in Oslo and really the community of punk music in Norway. So very cool to have them on here. Some metal riffing, some kind of metallic leads, which is not out of place in an 87 hardcore album. But I think on the punk side of things, where I find it tastefully done, I think it's a really good track. You then get S.C.A, Sounds of Concentrated Anger, if memory serves, a Dutch band who only ever got one album out. And there's a somewhat emotional track about addiction that is on here. It's titled Frustrated. And then 76% Uncertain, who are Connecticut, I believe, based hardcore veterans, round things out. And it's a good album. It's a good solid, if you like a little bit more interesting, meatier, more heavily produced, sometimes metallic tinged, or a little bit mixing it up, which I would often enjoy. I think a lot of the best stuff that came out in the mid to late 80s, you were moving away from just straightforward thrashathon and bands trying to mix it up a little bit. So I think that if you happen to be drawing any lessons whatsoever from this, that you can connect in anything, my mind is, I'm searching, but my mind can't really connect anything that's going on today to anything like this. Certainly not. Whoever could. Who could imagine such a thing? Yeah, but, hopefully some lessons learned, or were there. Thanks for watching. You know what to do with the likes and subscribes. This is Punk and Paisley. I'm Chris, and I will encourage you to continue to keep on rocking in the unfree world.